Ron, this is my brother David and his wife Julia.
Hi, David. Hi, Julia.
It
I'm
just
Ron.
it just
Nice to
Hello,
meet
good to meet you as
you.
yeah,
well.
there's the baby. There's my nephew Ezra. Hello,
Very
Oh
Ezra.
yeah.
nice.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He's chowing down
That's
right
Oh,
how.
that's
now.
awesome.
Well, oh, I don't know if you really know this, but well, you don't know if you don't know Ron, you might have seen what he did. You see, Ron Clements is the co-writer and co-director of The Little Mermaid, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year. And he also co-wrote and co-directed. He also co-directed The Great Mouse Detective, Aladdin, Hercules, Treasure Planet, Princess and the Frog, and he also co-directed Moana.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I'm retired now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked at Disney for 45 years.
Wow.
I was an animator in the early days, and I retired not too long after Moana. That was the last film, and I did co-directed and co-wrote those films with John Musker. Um, we were we did those together.
Yeah. So so I'm gonna so at least before we start, I'm gonna let you know a couple of things. One, I wouldn't do very well playing Ariel or Moana, not only because I don't have the looks or the voice in the case of Moana. I was busy starting my career in programming, but I also can't act. I am Moana. Shit, I am of Matanui. You, Maui, will board my boat, sail across the ocean, and restore the heart of Tahiti.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good.
I,
Yep.
I, I'll
Yeah, that was
I'll
a
swim up
good
to his
and
castle
constant.
and find no respect around to get his attention. Woohoo! Let's go!
Was that Moana?
No, I was just doing impersonations of Arnold, Tommy Wiseau, and Mario. It should have been obvious when I
Oh,
said,
okay.
let's go.
Okay. Okay. Um, um, yeah, that was in
Wanna do Mario, Jordan?
Mario. That was Mario. Yeah, yeah.
There you
My granddaughter is into Mario, so I should know that. I should know that. And as far as Tommy, the which one was that? That was he was
Tommy
in the
Wiseau
movie.
is like this.
Yeah, I
He
know who
just
he is.
can't even act. He started in this
go.
really bad movie called The
Yeah.
Room in
It's
2000.
a weird niche movie, Jordan.
So, The Little Mermaid, 1989. This
Huh?
movie needs no
What?
introduction to any American or at least to various citizens all over the world, including Disney fans like myself. And it all really started with Hans Christian Andersen. He thought that he
Yeah.
collaborated a whole bunch of fairy tales and then just published them all in one go, and the public just ate it up in 1812. Around
Hmm.
a century later, a little more than
Jordan, let's try to focus on questions and have Ron talk more than you. How's that sound, Jordan?
Oh, I'm glad that I have you on my pan. I have you here to help give me some guidance here. So,
I
hello,
Yeah,
Ron.
will.
yeah. Either way is fine. Yeah, I had never read Hans Christian Andersen's story of the Little Mermaid. Growing up, I had heard of it, but I had never read it. And actually, I never actually read it till probably around 1985, I think, or 84. I'm bad with dates, but the studio was looking for new ideas for movies, and and they were asking people just to go ahead and look for new ideas, and pitched them like a couple weeks later, and I took that seriously. I had just become a director at Disney around that time, a director on the film The Great Mouse Detective, and I went to a bookstore and I found the story The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, and I read it in the bookstore. And as I read it in the bookstore, I thought this seems like this could make a good movie. This could make a good animated feature. Although when I read it, then when I got to the end, it turned out it was very sad. It was a very sad
Yeah,
story
I
the way
know.
Christian Andersen wrote it. A lot of his stories were kind of sad, and it ended. The mermaid died in the end. Um,
Yeah,
um,
I
so
know
I
about
was,
that.
yeah, I mean,
Either
but
Cecil
I still
or
liked
the
it.
Shocker, if she kisses the prince, she had to kill her. Oh no, Ariel, a serial killer. Oh my golly, I can't
Yeah,
not.
I know. Um, so I was trying to, but I still liked it, and I still thought it would make a good idea for an animated Disney film, particularly because of the underwater world and the mermaid and the fun you could have with the underwater characters. So I tried to come up with a way to kind of give it a happier ending, um, which I did. I reworked the ending somewhat, but I still wanted it to kind of be true to kind of the themes of Anderson's story. So I wrote up a just a two-page treatment on it, and then a couple weeks later, then I did pitch it, and the studio liked it, and then it went into development, which is kind of how it works with the movies. You then you start just kind of developing the story and developing the look of the movie, and that goes on for a while, and and then it moved from there. And then John Musker and I, after we finished The Great Mouse Detective, we moved on to The Little Mermaid, and we wrote a script for it. And they liked the script, and then right around that time, or even before we finished the script, actually, we found out that the studio wanted a musical team of Howard Ashman and Alan Menken to do the music, to do the songs. At that point, they had done a Broadway show, an off-Broadway show, actually called Little Shop of Horrors, and and John and I had both seen that in Los Angeles. We had both seen Little Shop of Horrors, and we really liked it. So we were on board with that. So then Howard Ashman and Alan Menken early on then came on to the movie to write the songs for the movie, and that was really great. That was a really great process. Of course, I was a lot younger then. I was a young man. I was in my early 30s then, or mid 30s, I guess. And John and I are the same age. And but most of the people who worked on that movie were younger than we were. So it was fun. And as we heard the songs being written, everybody got really excited about the music, uh, and so it was a very fun time. And it was an important time for Disney because Disney animation, it's always kind of had its ups and downs over the years, and it had been coming off a little bit of a down period. So this was kind of a comeback for Disney at the time, and and then it led to films like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King. So that was a really great time for Disney animation at that time.
Oh, well, yeah, I definitely know. So so you already laid down your journey and the story of how it got resurrected, or maybe or also, yeah, considering you worked on the movie, you and John have already met Howard Ashman and was fascinated with his passion for music, and you always said that the team was real excited about his whole music thing. But that will lead to the question four on this sheet. I mean, did you guys
Hmm?
see Jaws for the Revenge? This time it's personal, with the shark getting stabbed with a boat mast and decided that should happen to Ursula. What did Universal think? Did you guys study octopi footage just to make Ursula's movements more real?
We looked at octopi and movies and videos of octopi, and one of the animators even took some live action footage of an octopus moving around and drew animated Ursula on top of the actual um, um, octopus, which so we could see how kind of that was going to work, and that looked like that was going to work really well. I don't think I saw that Jaws movie though. I know I saw the first one, of course. Everybody saw the first one, but I don't think I actually, now that you mention, I'm not sure I saw any of the sequels, and maybe I've seen bits and pieces, but I didn't know that there was that sort of parallel mermaid. I didn't actually know that.
Well, you realize that in the film, that the prince is able to just steal some boat mass and just stab the boat mass right into Ursula, therefore just annihilating the Ursula and then breaking
Yeah,
free.
I think he does. He worked on the movie, Jordan, so
He
Yeah,
directed.
he
yeah,
directed it. It's a great parallel. So let's move on to the next question, Jordan. What other questions do
okay.
you have?
Well, this is gonna sound crazy to you guys, but the you might not know this too much, but turns out Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of the feature film department at Disney at that time,
I see.
he
Uh-huh.
thought he could cut out the film's big "I Want" song, but some guy was able to protest just to put it back in. Now, I don't know how one fights an exec like that just to keep a song in
I could,
without getting fired and sent home.
Well, Jordan, why don't
well,
you
I
have
could,
him tell us about it?
yeah, I could tell you about that because that's absolutely true. I could tell you how it happened, and it was fairly late in the movie. The movie was still very unfinished, but it was in good enough shape that we could show it. And we had some school kids from around the area in the Burbank area. We had them bust in to the studio and we showed them the movie in its unfinished form. And actually, they liked it very much, except that when the song "Part of Your World" came up, which was still in black and white and was still pencil drawings, um, they got restless and they made noise in the theater. And I think one kid dropped his popcorn, and that may have made things worse. But anyway, out of that, Jeffrey was convinced that the song, I think he thought was a snooze, and that we needed to cut it out of the movie. And nobody wanted to cut it out of the movie. We didn't want to cut it out of the movie. Howard Ashman didn't want to cut it out of the movie. And the animator, Glenn Keane, who animated Part of Your World, he didn't want to cut it out of the movie. But Jeffrey was sort of adamant, and he felt like we were too close to it. And we knew, I don't know if you know this, but of course, one of my favorite films growing up was The Wizard of Oz, and there was controversy on The Wizard of Oz early on that they wanted to cut Somewhere Over the Rainbow out of that movie for the same reason. And so we brought that up to Jeffrey, and we said this is like what they almost did with The Wizard of Oz. And can you believe if they cut Somewhere Over the Rainbow out of The Wizard of Oz? And fortunately, they didn't. And finally, after everybody was arguing and arguing, Jeffrey backed down somewhat, and he said, "Okay, we should screen the movie again." This was like maybe 3 months later, and we brought in school kids again, a bunch of school kids, but now the movie, a lot of it was in color now. So at least some of it was color, and some of the effects were in, so you could kind of see how things worked. And nobody made any noise. All the kids were quiet this time. And so thank God they were quiet. Otherwise, we could have lost that song. And we're really glad that the song stayed in the movie.
Yeah, I heard it played at the the midnight the night fireworks show at Disney World Magic Kingdom, which I just
Uh-huh.
visited, and I was able to get some cool Disney swag. I was able to ride some great rides and have I even saw I even saw Ariel on the parade, a Fantasyland
Uh-huh.
parade and stuff. So that's so that was definitely quite unique. And I, I know that these guys I, I don't know, it's just well, here's my sixth question that was getting on to this segment because I don't really know how
Uh-huh.
fast one could do things in the late 80s, but the winds of change were blowing because Ariel's
Uh-huh.
wedding at the end of this movie suddenly became the first all digital ending of a movie ever, throwing out the ink and paint process and suddenly using CAPS, computer animation production system. How soon were you and John informed about the change, and how soon did they finish this before they got put it on all the 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter thumbprints and shipped to theaters since they still used projected on film projectors in 1989?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's true. You're right. And what it was before that, um, all the films, and if you're an animation fan, you may know this that excuse me, all the films going back to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which was the first Disney animated feature, the way they were done, the animators did their drawings in pencil on paper. They did their animation drawings on pencil and paper, and then there were other artists that hand inked those drawings onto sort of acetate cells or celluloid at that time, I guess. And then those cells were painted, hand painted on the back, and the backgrounds were painted. And they put those cells over the painted backgrounds, and that's how animation was done for years and years and years. And around the time of The Little Mermaid, they were developing a new process called CAPS, the CAPS system, computer animated ink and paint system. I guess the CAPS means the computer animated ink and paint system. And in that system, the animation was still done by the animators on with a pencil and paper, but instead of them being hand inked and painted, they were transferred digitally and then painted digitally and composited with the backgrounds digitally. And that was new. And that was being developed when we were starting Mermaid. And originally there was a thought that maybe Mermaid would be the first film that was done completely in caps. Well, it wasn't ready by then. So actually, Mermaid was the last Disney feature that was still uh, was cells on a background, cells photographed on a background. It was done the same as all the others, except for the very last scene of the movie, uh, which was um, which was a test of this new system. And that not the very last scene of the movie, it's actually the second to the last scene when King Triton creates a rainbow as the ship is going off in the distance. And that scene was done the new way with the cap system. It actually didn't work very well. We had a lot of problems with the caps at that time because it was brand new, and we weren't really so happy about the way that shot turned out. So we actually added a shot after it where the mermaid and Ariel and Prince Eric where they kiss, a close up where they kiss. So we didn't end on the cap shot. We ended on the shot where they kissed. But then the next film after Mermaid was actually the film called The Rescuers Down Under, a sequel to The Rescuers, and that was all done in the cap system. That was the first film done in the cap system, and they had a lot of problems on that movie, but it worked out. And then from then on, all the movies were done with the cap system, which and there are a lot of cool things you could do in the cap system that you couldn't do with the other system. Um, and that was how the films were done until a film like Toy Story then was done then another different way. Toy Story was completely digital, created all digitally. Everything was created digitally. There wasn't drawing involved. The sets, the characters were three-dimensional models that were animated, like the drawings are animated, and the sets were three-dimensional that were lit, and and that became very popular after Toy Story.
Right.
The home video release of this film succeeded well, maybe too well. Turns out on the first video
I
release,
know.
people complained about explicit imagery on the front cover
Oh,
residing in the undersea castle, and then they banned the cover and put out a new one. These VHS tapes go for thousands on eBay. What are your opinions on this rather strange turn of events in home video history? Because this, I'm never gonna sell.
Jordan? All right.
yeah, those things. I think those things are valuable. Yeah, the cover of the Little Mermaid. You're right. It was, and I will tell you truthfully, John Musker and I approved that cover. We saw the cover. They showed us that video cover. We looked at that cover and we approved it. And we never noticed that there was something on that cover that was a little bit questionable. We never noticed it, but other people noticed it when it went out on video, and it got a lot of attention, which obviously we were not happy about. It's always been a question like, did the person who drew that cover or the person who painted that cover, did they, because they're spending time, were they aware of this issue? And I actually, at one point, this was still a few years ago, I met the artist who painted that cover. I've never met the artist who drew the cover, but I met the artist who painted that cover, and he told me he was painting that cover in the middle of the night, and he never noticed. It was just never aware of what it was that people objected to. I don't know, and you're right. Those videos are worth a lot now. A lot of those are worth a lot.
Yeah, I'm never selling the Peter Pan video. It's still in the box. It's still fresh. Oh, I mean, there might be a little bit of a, there might be a little bit of a, I don't know. I mean, let me get this straight. There might be a little bit of a crack here, or at least,
The wear and
but it
tear.
was still in the box. A little wear and tear because of
Yeah,
its age, but still good after a long
Excellent.
time. It might as well fetch some value.
Great.
Probably when I die. I don't know.
What's the next
But
yeah. Who
question,
knows?
Jordan?
I have some.
final
I've kept
question.
some. Uh-huh.
Oh, really? So, final question from me. Despite whatever people
Okay.
may feel about Ariel's character or some funky quote unquote journalists thinking the film is regressive or something, why do people still come up to you and say, Ariel is my favorite Disney princess?
That's a good question. I think. I mean, it's. I know what you're referring to. That some when we were making the film, we there hadn't been a Disney princess for quite a while. The one just before the Little Mermaid was Sleeping Beauty, and Sleeping Beauty came out in the 1950s, and the Little Mermaid came out in the 1980s. So there hadn't been a new Disney princess in a long time. And as for me and for the other people who worked on the film, that we felt a lot of pressure because we felt this is the first Disney princess in a long time, and we wanted her to hold her own against Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, who were the earlier princesses. But we also wanted her to feel like a real teenager. We wanted her to kind of feel like a contemporary teenager, so that a contemporary teenage girl watching the movie could sort of relate to that character and her relationship with her father and feel like you could kind of identify with that. Even the fact that she's rebellious and in some ways is not the perfect role model in some ways for how maybe a father would want their teenage girl to act, but we wanted to do that, and I think that made her very, very relatable. Even though she makes mistakes and she does some questionable things, I think she was relatable as a teenage girl, as a real teenage girl.
Even Roger Ebert was saying, "Oh, she's daring. She's want to try to get up there. She wants to do some stuff. She wants to." He was like, "I have nothing but compliments for this film," and this is like way back when you could actually trust critics, and now look where we are with YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. Everything's changed a lot. That was a long time ago now.
Yeah.
Those are great questions, Jordan. And obviously, you're very familiar with the movie and all the kind of a lot of the behind the scenes things that we went through. And you guys had a question or two?
Oh yes, go ahead, David.
So I'm not as familiar with with the world of animation and movie making as Jordan is. But I found it really interesting when you were talking about basically it sounded almost like focus testing the film with kids. Is that something that is typically done and it was or is typically done when animated movies are created through Disney?
Actually, no, as far as I know. And actually, let me see. I think we did it with Aladdin too. I think we had school kids early on with Aladdin, and when we did it on Mermaid, I don't think it had been done before. I think it was we had new people, I think, and maybe because of Jeffrey Katzenberg and our more immediate boss Peter Schneider, it was an idea of trying to do that to get some sense of the movie. But we always do preview the movies. We and that's the same. I think most live action movies as well as animated movies at a certain point, at a later point, this was earlier, but at a later point, when the movie's around maybe half in color and feel like it's far enough along that an audience in a theater can watch it and they can follow everything, we take it to a real theater with a real audience and we preview it and we watch it with the audience and we learn a lot watching it with the audience. And then the audience fills out questionnaires and they sort of rate the movie and they have numbers. And actually, The Little Mermaid, when we tested the movie in a theater with a real audience for the first time, that was the highest rating any Disney movie had ever gotten.
Oh, wow.
At that point, it was since then. Aladdin actually tested really well, but not quite as well as Little Mermaid. I think Beauty and the Beast even didn't test quite as well. But it's always nervous. Any of the movies that we've done, and I'm sure any movies that first time you've been working on this thing for like 3 years or 4 years sometimes, and we show it to the staff. We show it to the staff on a regular basis. But that's not the same as just bringing in people
Right.
off the street, so to speak,
Right.
and
Yeah.
showing it to a regular audience. And it's very stressful and it's very and we've had movies, most of our movies have previewed well. We've had a couple that didn't preview as well as we hoped, and that's tough. But then you learn things from the previews and you make changes. I mean, it's still in a stage when you preview the movie. That's why we do it, so that if we feel like, oh, there's something that's not clear, or there's something, or we want to add jokes, or we just feel like something, we still have time to make changes and adjust. And even Mermaid, even though it previews so high, we still made some changes. We did a few things because that we thought would make it work better. So that's why they have previews, and they do the same with live action.
Yeah.
They still do that. That's still part of the whole process.
Well, this is less. I don't have another question, but I would like to say that I grew up enjoying a lot of movies that you had a hand in, and I want to thank you for the joy, quite frankly, you've brought to my life, and probably will bring to his life too as he grows
Yeah.
up. The Little Mermaid as a kid was
How
my
old?
favorite movie, and Aladdin was my brother's favorite movie. So we were watching a lot of movies that you really had a really big part in. So thank you.
So how old is he?
He is like 3.5 months.
3.5. Yeah, he seems pretty little.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
little.
my granddaughter was born during Moana.
Okay.
Before about a year before Moana came out, maybe of that, and she's 8 now, but she watched Moana a lot as just a baby. It somehow she seemed to really like that movie a lot
That has to be
as a
so
baby.
special. Oh my gosh.
That's really awesome.
Um, but it's very fun talking to you, Jordan, and like I say, those were great questions, and I'm glad we were able to meet like this,
Of
Oh
course.
yeah. Um,
and great to meet you guys. And
Meet
what's
you,
his
meet
name?
you, Ronald.
You too, Ron.
Thanks for coming out.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure, sure, this was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jordan.
yeah. I can if your schedule was a little more open, I could probably I could probably have you drop by again any time and have you drop by any time at least to
All right.
discuss another one of your achievements at Disney and stuff.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Right,
Okay.
thank
All right,
you.
Jordan. All right. Well, good to meet you, Ron.
Have a good evening,
Good
Ron.
To meet you guys too.
Hey, I'm glad to meet you too.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.